Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to be with us today and welcome to the M&A Academy program and our first webinar in the series of 2024. My name is Supratim Chakraborty and I'm a partner in Khaitan and Company's corporate M&A group. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to every one of you online, whether you are in the audience in India or around the world. The M&A Academy program is designed to provide foundational legal knowledge and understanding on M&A transactions and processes to corporate executives, in-house legal teams, and other participating or interested in M&A in India today. Our subject today is how technology enables M&A today, quite a hot one. On this slide is the agenda for today's webinar. As you can see, in summary, we will have a short video presentation followed by an expert panel discussion and Q&A session with audience questions. We have already received several audience questions, and if you do have any other question, please submit them using the facility provided in the webinar portal. If we cannot cover all questions during the webinar, we will respond offline by email after the webinar. Also, please note that a copy of the presentation, summary note of the discussion, and a recording of the webinar will be sent to you after the webinar, which is as a matter of course. Now M&A is an important part of our firm's practice with more than 50 partners dedicated to this area alone, because India has been and continues to experience massive growth in M&A transactions. The topic for this webinar is, like I mentioned, very important in the Indian M&A landscape as well, because of the impact that technology is having on not only the M&A process and the structure of the teams that deliver M&A transactions, but the quality, the efficiency, and the cost effectiveness with which M&A transactions can be implemented. It is therefore critical for all of us to better understand technology in M&A, like technology in any other space today, which of course is the objective of this webinar. So when we talk about M&A technology, what are we talking about? This slide is a critical one. Okay, this slide describes the key steps in the life cycle of an M&A deal and what technology is available to be used in each and every of this space. Okay, it's not only about document automation. The American Bar Association M&A Technology Committee has researched available technologies and has developed this structure for analyzing M&A tech. Now, coming to the panel introduction, everyone who has registered for this webinar should already have received the email summary of the panel members and their credentials to talk about on this topic. So I would not spend much time introducing them, but suffice to say that they are all experts in this subject matter and qualified to express their views on these issues. When we were having our pre-chats, trust me, it was exciting and exhilarating. I think you will also enjoy this talk, therefore. On our panel today, we are joined by Elena Fox, who's a Market Development Director at Thomson Reuters, marketing in London, and has more than 2 decades of experience in professional service technology. Next is Ishan Sharma, who's a lawyer and a leading technology consultant in India, who was COO of one of India's leading law firms and involved in much of their technology implementation, and has also worked in strategy at another leading Indian law firm. Rasmeet Charya is next, who is a dual qualified Indian and UK lawyer and has worked in law firm and tech corporate environments and consults on technology and innovation. Puranjay Trahan, who is a lawyer with Thomson Reuters, consulting on legal software implementation in Asia Pacific. And last but not the least, Aditya Srikant, who is a member of Khaitan and Company's innovation team. Welcome, all of you. However, before starting the panel discussion and to provide some context for the discussion, we want to show you a short video about a survey conducted by Litera last year of more than 350 M&A professionals in 7 countries, including US, Canada, UK, Australia, and Germany, in firms of more than 80 professionals about their use of technology in mergers and acquisitions. We are showing this video to give you some sense of what is happening outside India in M&A tech in the leading M&A markets around the world. So you can assess what you or your organization does and to provide context for our panel discussion. Of special note is the fact that most survey respondents are using technology in most of the stages of mergers and acquisition process and are satisfied with the technology that they are using. Also, a substantial majority believe that technology is a source of competitive advantage to their firms in M&A, and that artificial intelligence is becoming a standard component of M&A due diligence. Just some reasons to be interested in this survey. Our thanks must go to Litera for conducting the survey and giving us the permission to run the video. Can we have the video, please?
And thanks everyone for being here today. So first, we're going to go through some of the results. It's a preview of them from our Global Technology and M&A survey. It's a report that's based on a quantitative survey that we conducted early this year, starting in mid-January until mid-February. The sample included lawyers whose practices focus on M&A transactions in firms of over 80 lawyers in 6 countries. So that's the US, the UK, Canada, Brazil, Germany, and Australia. So for this research, we limited our focus to technologies, like Ali mentioned, are targeted specifically to lawyers engaged in the M&A processes. We didn't, for example, ask about generalized productivity tools like Microsoft Office tools, general collaboration tools such as document management systems, or video conferencing applications, even if we know that those are tools that are widely used in M&A practice. Also, in preparing this survey, we had the benefit of a project that's worked on by the American Bar Association's Technology in M&A Subcommittee, which is they document a wide range of technologies that are specific to M&A practice. So they have 5 broad categories that we're going to see a little bit more depth into that have subcategories affiliated with them. So some of the key findings that we'll shed a bit more light on today are that we're finding that legal teams are using a wide variety of technologies in their work to support them with negotiating transactions, doing due diligence, drafting agreements, managing deal closings, and overall organization. Secondly, M&A teams seem to really recognize that technology is going to enable them to deliver even better client service, which is what we're all here for. Technology is reshaping M&A teams. We're seeing new roles, new skill sets, and different career paths as technologies continue to evolve. And last, and definitely not least, that AI technologies are really well established and becoming more and more ubiquitous. As you can suspect, generative AI likely figures into that. Okay, so the first area that the survey covered was adoption and investment in technology across the M&A workflow. So you can see here that we found that adoption levels are quite strong across all different areas, with technology having an impact across the entire deal workflow. We think that this means that M&A teams have implemented technology at every stage of their workflows and are showing eagerness to modernize and automate processes that were formerly done manually. So you can see that 5 of 15 technologies that our respondents identified were used by more than 50% of those firms. And then we also found that some of the technologies were seen as more important than others. So the technologies that M&A teams identified as being most important tended to be those that help manage processes and large data sets. And since these are among the most used technologies, anyway, it makes sense that they're considered the most important. So drafting, negotiation, and accessing data in data rooms for diligence purposes are core processes, that are central to most transactions. As a category, diligence had the highest importance rankings, which reflects how important diligence is, of course, to managing client risks, a central concern for M&A teams. And then we had other categories that also received high importance scores, and those included technologies that help with the entire end-to-end workflow, such as project management, closing, and negotiation platforms. The importance of these tools suggests an interest in bringing deal processes into more unified platforms for more efficient execution of the deals that firms are working on. We also asked whether M&A technologies help improve the respondents' M&A practices, and more importantly, how. For each of the technologies that respondents say they used, we asked them what specific aspects of their experiences in which they saw improvement. So their answers gave us some pretty good insight into what motivates them to leverage technology more in their work. So the aspects that were most improved by the use of technology were accuracy, security, faster deal completion, and simplification of the M&A process. We think it's pretty interesting that accuracy came out on top. It potentially indicates that there's growing trust in the ability of technology to really assist and add value to the work that M&A lawyers are doing. We also thought it was interesting that most M&A lawyers actually see their firms as innovators or early adopters. So in contrast to the reputation of lawyers being more risk averse and resistant to adopting technology, most of the M&A lawyers that we surveyed here actually rated their firms as innovators with high tolerance for risk at 27%, or early adopters with a moderate tolerance for risk. So this seems to give some support for the idea that M&A lawyers are actually ahead of the curve and ahead of other practice areas in terms of their technology adoption. So I think, as we all know, M&A work is really process-oriented, involves large volumes of documents and data. So it's exactly the kind of work that lends itself to more standardization and automation that technology can assist with. Okay. And then last, in technology adoption, we found that M&A practice groups are expecting to increase their investments as time goes. So these responses suggest that technology investments are only going to accelerate in the coming months and years. I'm not really sure who said decrease there. Okay. So the second area, the main area that our survey covered, was that technology is going to enable more client-centric service delivery. And as a result of the increased use of and investments in technology, M&A teams are reporting better conversations with clients on the scope and pricing of matters. It's really enabling them to be more creative in structuring deals. We hope you agree with that, and competing for business, and that they're using technology as a differentiator and competitive advantage in attracting more M&A business. So we asked about technology coming up as a topic in conversations with M&A lawyers' clients, and found that clients' greatest priorities when engaging in a new transaction were cost and accuracy. Some of the other priorities that we saw that received higher scores were speed, risk management, and the scope of due diligence review. This actually was consistent across all the different countries that we surveyed, and also consistent by firm size. So there was no difference. Okay. We also found that 87%, the top 87% of responses that received related to getting better accuracy, less risk, and increased efficiency as benefits of improving client experience. So those, it makes sense because those factors are really relevant in M&A work. You can see that 87% of respondents ranked one of these top 4 benefits as the most important. And then suggests that client interest in risk management, getting accurate results, and improving their client relationships are really central considerations for lawyers choosing to leverage technology in M&A deals. And of course, it's inevitable that when technology evolves, so do the people working in the teams where technology is being implemented. We're going to see in the next few slides that M&A teams are seeing their firms investing in a wide variety of technology and data-related professional skills and roles. So we see here that on average, respondents are saying that their firms are increasing their investments in several types of professionals. I think you can see here, so some of the main ones that we saw receiving increased investments were project managers, product managers, and knowledge managers. Those were the most common types of roles that are seeing increased investment. We're also seeing similar roles or similar amounts of investment being put towards legal knowledge engineering, data analysts, pricing, and budgeting managers. We are also trying to look towards the future too, and seeing how technology has impacted the next generation of lawyers. We found that 81% of the respondents that we surveyed think that younger lawyers coming into the profession are either really well prepared, 30%, or well prepared, 51%, for using tech in the legal practice. So this could simply reflect the fact that younger lawyers may be seen as more technologically savvy and are engaged and interested in the use of technology in their practice. It could also suggest that firms are lagging on technology deployment they may start to feel increasing pressure to build up their capacities to evaluate technology and to encourage more adoption across the firm as part of their overall efforts to recruit and retain younger lawyers. And last in this area, we saw that training efforts show that firms are investing in skills related to technology and the business of law. Could reflect the fact that business and technology skills are now part of the overall service delivery solution in legal industry. So having that business understanding is really important to success as an M&A lawyer. So learning the client's business, things like financial literacy were the largest category of tech-related training that's offered by 89% of the respondents' firms. And we also found that lawyers are becoming more engaged in their firm's business strategies, and not just in terms of legal knowledge and practice experience. And finally, what would this session be without innovation? About innovation, we can't not talk about AI, right? So next, we're going to go through some of the results from questions we asked about the use of AI technologies in M&A practice. So, of course, stating the obvious, like Ali mentioned, AI is not an emerging technology. Kira has been around for over 10 years, the first to use machine learning in M&A practice. It's already here, and it's a mainstream part of a lot of M&A teams' work already. And we saw that 80% agreed that AI is important to their overall practice, with 32% saying that it's very important. We found that a similar share of respondents, that 73% of them considered AI to be very important for their due diligence activities, specifically with 31% deeming it very important. So I think if you think about that, with the 44% that are already using technology to support the work that they're doing with due diligence, we'll hopefully start to see that gap close a bit more over the next few years to bring reality in line with expectations. And then next, the impact of AI on M&A practices. Nearly all of the respondents, so 87% of them, expected that AI tools for document review and contract review are going to become a standard part of most M&A due diligence processes. And we had 33% of them strongly believing that to be the case. And then in terms of client relationships, we touched on how technology is impacting client relationships a few slides back. But as you can see, it's really taking a centralized role in M&A due diligence processes. So in our survey, we learned about a few different aspects of M&A work that indicate that technology and AI are changing the way that work gets done, and how those discussions are providing different opportunities for additional and different engagement and consultations with clients. So these charts provide some of the signs that AI is becoming more important in the day-to-day relations with clients and planning and scoping the work. So that it continues to be a part of the conversation. So as a result, legal teams are going to benefit from having a clear understanding of when and how AI can be deployed, which Brian is going to talk about in a bit, and the pricing, staffing decisions that go into transactions where the expectation is that diligence reviews and other work in connection with a deal is going to involve AI. And my last slide here is that we saw that in speaking with some of you yesterday and today, that M&A lawyers are really expecting to see the use of AI to increase in their practices. The proportion of M&A engagements completed using AI-based technologies we saw is expected to increase significantly over the next 5 years. And then looking ahead, we saw that 84% of the survey respondents expected either significantly increasing importance or just increasing importance of the role of AI in their practices.
Great. That was a great context setting, I think, and thank you and welcome back. So now let's get started to bring in our panel members. My first question is to you, Rasmeet. So what are the most important elements of the mergers and acquisitions deal cycle that can be enabled by technology? Whether is it diligence, is it negotiation, drafting, closing, or the entire organization of the same?
So first of all, thanks Supratim for having me here. To start with, I broadly would call this entire technology as a transaction management technology. And under that, I bring in, I feel data rooms is like the low-hanging fruit. That's where everything starts. And we have a variety of data rooms today available. The second technology, which I feel is the drafting technology, whether you call it the contract drafting or automation tools, or you can even call it as the contract review tools, we have a whole variety of that available again in the industry. And then definitely I feel, since I have deeply studied the entire industry about it, I feel we have the end-to-end transaction management solutions also available today. So therefore we have things like HighQ, we have Litera Transact, which we saw a lot of them, Dockyard. So to me, if someone has to start using technology in the M&A area, data rooms is the first place. And then you can graduate towards moving towards your contract review. And also, I had done a kind of based on my experience, I had surveyed, and I always felt that almost 50% of the time of the lawyers in an M&A transaction goes in the data room, data collection, data review. So I think it is very important that we nail down that area. And then comes your transaction bits, which was around 23%, and then another 31% or so was which would go into your drafting the real, executing the documents. So I think that was what was my understanding.
Right. And I think a related question to Elena, and maybe Rasmeet, you should also chime in here. So what do you think, what are the major benefits of using technology to enable M&A in the most important elements of the M&A deal cycle?
Thanks, Supratim, and again, thanks for the invite to the webinar. I think transaction management, really picking up from what Rashmeet says, is a key area where we see, at Thomson Reuters, firms really poised to get ahead of their competitors for all the reasons that you may have heard in the video at the beginning, that sort of enhancing the client experience for corporate legal departments. So I think for law firms that perhaps haven't ventured down the technology route for any stage of the transaction management life cycle, those differentiators are going to start to be really revealed as we move forward into 2024 with the advent of incredibly sophisticated generative AI capabilities. So I think that the benefits are numerous. I think the client experience piece comes front and center. If you're not offering a seamless transactional experience, if you're not utilizing tech in the right way at the right stage of the deal lifecycle, as Rashmeet says, gathering all of that data from the VDR, pulling it right through into due diligence, through to closing and to post-integration services, those differentiators will be quite obvious, I think, moving forward. And we know corporate legal departments are really keen to see that. I would also just add, the human element, for busy, burnt out, stressed deal teams, the ability to have tech to alleviate some of those burdens is really crucial. So talent retention, another thing for law firms to offer those technologies that, let lawyers be lawyers and do the stuff that you went to law school for, rather than working in multiple systems. So I say the client experience, talent retention, and just that sort of seamless tech ability to work across a deal flow are hugely important.
Just to add to Elena, maybe flexibility and customizability is also, I feel, are very important, because we see in an M&A deal, every deal is a different type of a deal, right? And there are lots of moving parts and teams have different processes. So therefore, it's very important that the technology that we are using is customizable, gives you some flexibility to do the things your way as well, while giving you the major placeholders and the major framework. So I feel that is definitely an important area.
Right. I think great point to both of you. I was in a conference recently, and someone said that, see, things which are repetitive in nature, probably AI would be able to quickly, get in there. But things where there are nuances, and like you said, every transaction is different. How do we ensure that we take help of AI, but at the same time, the human element is getting in prominently and adding that critical value add from a human perspective? Moving on to my next question. So, and this is to you, Elena. how does M&A enabling technology impact accuracy, efficiency, speed, and cost in an M&A transaction, which is for clients one of the important pillars?
So just picking up on Rashmeed's point there as well, you know, at Thomson Reuters, we've built an end-to-end transaction management solution in HighQ. So that platform that goes from VDRs to due diligence to closing into post-integration services was built with that flexibility and customization in mind that Rashmeed very rightly highlighted. And the real drivers behind that, I've spent the last 12 to 18 months interviewing around 100 law firms and corporate legal departments globally to say, tell us your pain points, tell us what is it that's causing delays. Is it extracting data from the virtual data rooms into getting into the due diligence report, clients perhaps not wanting to pay for those services as much as traditionally, and you've spent a huge amount of time with junior associate time reviewing that. Tell us what it is that's causing those delays. And I think those firms were moving towards a much more automated, tech-enabled transaction management workflow. We're seeing huge benefits, whether that's implementing AI for document review, or whether that's using best-in-breed closing providers. We've integrated deeply with Deal Closer, as we felt best in class for that part of the market. But efficiency, getting due diligence reports out to clients quicker, but also enabling that high-value strategic eye on the work that the partners might want to do. Again, going back to the stuff that you went to law school to do and not to do, maybe the drudgery or the heavy lifting of documents that AI can very ably and very accurately review and do for the lawyers. So I think speed for the client, again touching back on that client experience piece, efficiency for deal teams, and just enabling a sort of something that came out very strongly in our interviews was show me a single source of truth across the entire deal life cycle. It's very hard for M&A teams to do that if you're in multiple disparate systems. How do you show your team where you're at the stage, or show your clients crucially how close you are to closing if the deal goes to closing? So there were some of the key points that certainly came out in the last year of my research.
Right, Elena, I really loved what you say, that you went to law school for a particular reason. I think if you focus on that, probably that is where technology and AI is nudging you towards. I remember some time back, a junior lawyer had come up and said that, will our jobs be gone? And I said that probably it will reduce a lot of mundane work that you're doing, which can go out and you can channelize your energies towards higher things and technical legal knowledge. So with that, I'll switch gears and I'll go to Ishan, and Pooranjay, you can also chime in there. How is M&A enabling technology changing M&A processes? For example, automated contract review of all deal contracts as opposed to review of just a smaller sample of contracts.
Thank you, Subradhan, for inviting me for this webinar. And I will pick up from points from Elena, what Rashmeed has said, because they're all interlinked, all these points. Now, here, how the M&A technology is changing the entire process. I would go all the way back to even staffing on the M&A deals, the deal management, the data that is now being developed within the organization themselves about the expertise and the time, etc. Help people staff better and more equipped people, time-wise, taking all the other considerations into the particular project, and staff more than probably just the practicing lawyers on that transaction. So the staffing itself is becoming better. I would also say that because of the advent of the data rooms and what the AI-based data room specifically, and the visibility that is now afforded to people, afforded to all the sections, even the lawyers as well as the finance side of the entire M&A cycle, because I don't think we can consider the entire M&A cycle without considering all the advisors coming together. And suddenly, if you have a platform-based working rather than this copious number of emails flowing left, right, and center, and managing them in some kind of a document management system also, but more of a platform-based working. It can bring in all sort of people who are part of that M&A cycle. And it really works wonder to have that healthy exchange of information in a transparent manner. And as a next step to it, I would say the way you would want to look at the M&A process, I would say visualization is key. Now, visualization has been the domain of a lot of what non-technical aspects. Now you talk about the marketing, etc., and you would focus that's where you use visualization. But when you're assessing data, it is really one of the keys. Now, we've never focused on that aspect, and how easy it's to grasp information about, and eventually leading to risk mitigation. It's all possible through the idea of the platform-based visualizations, which is flows from all the way from collection of the data to analysis to due diligence reviews to analyzing the data itself. So I would say that the way we want to approach the entire M&A, or the entire M&A cycle, it would be less time consuming, more efficient, more transparent.
And I think to add on to that, I think Ishan rightly mentioned one aspect of better record keeping. I think there are times when certain documents, etc., are sitting on someone's desktop, or probably some members who left the organization with the high attrition that we're going through in law firms and corporate as well. I think this is one of the most important parts that I would want to focus is how easy it would be to navigate to documentation, to files, to records, etc., and not being reliant on one member of your team who might leave the organization. And in general, I think cleaner record keeping. The next point that I'd like to mention is democratization of document drafting, how a basic template based documents can even be drafted by any member of business by entering, let's say, a form like structure. At Thomson Reuters, we have a product like document automation, where even business members are able to fill in certain forms and get a handy document created through and through without being reliant on the legal teams, and again adding on to the burdens of the legal team as well. And I think the last point that I'd like to mention is a streamlined communication process where collaboration can take place across the globe, and no one has to be dependent on a certain member being available online and then getting an interaction with them. You can work through, and with these processes in place, there is a very coherent audit history, audit log being present. So any action is being tracked irrespective of who is taking that, and can again be undone because it's being tracked through solid audit history.
Yeah, very, very valid points. Moving to you, Aditya, sorry for keeping you waiting. So what are the latest developments you think are there in the due diligence contract review technology? And maybe Ishan, you can also chime in there.
So thanks for having me here. I think a major development has been LLM-based review. Earlier, we had to have data sets which were collated to say like Indian contracts and US contracts. Because of the sheer power of LLMs to say understand language, now we're able to easily say this is this is the NDA, this is the SPA. So those sort of simple tasks are much more easier. And in addition to that, I also think the ability to categorize documents is much more easier, and the significantly lesser training times. So if I have like, let's say 5 NDAs and I want to categorize them out of like say 1,000, it becomes much more easy. And I think it's primarily the ability of the computer to now understand the documents with some nuance is the differentiating factor.
I would add to, I think I would just summarize it in a very simple way, that when I looked at it back, the technology 5 years ago, it would be a more of a secretarial job, what AI could do and what contract reviewing process. Today is definitely progress to what a paralegal would do. And I know that this technology is maturing and like day by day, and sooner than later you will have even better. So I would say that is definitely the progression as to what you expected from a technology 5 years ago and what you can expect now.
Great points. I think, yeah, Elena, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to add, I think, even since that Latera, survey was done, that was sort of January, February of 2023, a huge amount has changed since then. I mean, in March 2023, Casetext, developed their OpenAI large language model for law firms, and in August, TR bought Casetext. So we now have CoCounsel out in the market, and the capabilities are incredible. Puranjay and I had an AI learning day just a couple of days ago, and we've rolled our sleeves up and are using it with clients. The functionality is incredible, and I think the last 6 months, there were seismic changes in the industry. Whether that's preparing a deposition, whether that's drafting correspondence, searching a database, it's moving forward at lightning speed. And I think for lawyers, for busy transactional teams, having that trusted content behind that, that's what you want. You still want to review it as a senior partner, but whether it's Practical Law or Westlaw, feeding into those data sets is crucial. So I think trust, reliability, but the scale of and the direction of travel is is going to be incredible for M&A teams, and exciting, really exciting.
Right. In lawyer terms, I think there was a discussion amongst some of the folks, again, in a conference of artificial intelligence. And the discussion was in terms of the product coming in, maybe it was akin to an intern's work, then it moved to a first-year associate to a second year, and probably now we are in the senior associate or principal associate zone, and it'll only go, become better from here. Rashmi, the related question to you. What about developments in due diligence data room technology?
Yeah, so I think ever since I would say the AI boom came in, I think every data room is trying to, every company is trying to bring in the AI element into it. But today, I think what it is helping is right from, collecting your data, indexing your data, then, passing it or extracting, information out of your data, having preview permissions, analyzing what your data is. So today, data rooms are doing a whole lot of things. So like there's another data room which I've recently seen, and I've worked with them also, Ruby Datum, where we are also connecting the data storage with the question and answers. By that we mean your due diligence checklist. So that means your checklist is now actionized and you have documents with it, you have entire evidence happening. So you don't have to go back and forth with all the requisitions and all the information. So I think the data room technology is really, really leveraging AI a lot, because whatever elements AI can do, that is applicable in the data room scenario. So therefore, there are lots of parts which are getting automated because of the AI. And again, we have the mobile versions available now. We have the AI-enabled versions available. So I think it is really, really growing. And somewhere I would say it is transitioning into a due diligence automation areas, and even in the due diligence review areas. So I think the scope is widening.
Got it. And I think an excellent thing to hear, at least from a law firm side, because you would understand that probably that's one of the biggest headaches that we have. You send a requisition list, and then there is a virtual data room where document is all over. Sometimes it's lying, some parts are lying with the the financial due diligence pieces, and we are told go hunt it out of that. So I think if that's happening, excellent. My next question is to you, Ishan, and Rashmi, I would also request you to chime in there. Where do you think the development of technology enabling M&A is heading in the future? What do you see would be the potential challenges and also risks? Because we should not leave it out of our conversation.
So there are definitely challenges and risks that we are seeing in terms of there's privacy. There is, and it's been my experience that certain on the client side there have been jitters on the idea that okay, is my data, how is your AI going to learn? Is my data going to be shared? And that's a fairly, I would say, yes, definitely a valid concern. But all these organizations, which are global organizations, which are focused on this idea, are taking that really seriously, and they are doing as much as in their power to actually tell people that what this is. We are cognizant of this issue that you have. and we're working on it, and we have worked on it, and these are the evidences. Now that's where the mind shift is required from a lot of people, that okay, sometimes you have to take that risk. So if you remember, moving from on-premise email system to cloud email system, that was such a huge change for people. Like, oh my god, my data is going to cloud, oh my god, my financial data is going to cloud. Yes, now someone in cloud is actually going through that data and actually coming with better analysis. Yes, so those are definitely the challenges that we see, and constant marketing and constant communications with the client, events like these, I would say, and talking about it more and more, getting people to be comfortable with the idea that this just helps out everyone in the process. That would be possibly our solution to it. Simpler solution, but the execution is a lot more hard work on a daily basis. So I would say those are definitely the challenges I see.
Yeah, so just to add to Ishan, I suppose we are definitely heading towards more technology usage in due diligence, particularly, because that was an area which was always very nuanced. It was an area which was very, data intensive. And we have always seen a lot of collaboration requirements in that area. Now, I suppose with AI coming, specifically the LLM pieces coming in or other subsets of AI coming in, I think it is helping you to join all the dots together, right? So now we can say that, okay, I personally feel due diligence is definitely going to be one area which is going to see a lot of AI usage. And then second is the end-to-end transaction management. Because, having multiple systems, disintegrated systems is always another pain, and does not allow the lawyers to actually adopt technology. Because, you can imagine if you're using 5 different systems, you just don't want to do that, right? But if you have an integrated system, that definitely helps you, and it also helps you to utilize the knowledge which is there in the system. So for example, if you're having your, say, LOIs or your memorandum of understanding, what are the commercial terms that have gone into that? And later you want to use those terms in drafting your SPAs, SHAs, SSAs, or any agreement. So you can use that information. It should, seamlessly move from the first stage to there. And similarly, in a due diligence context, you have your due diligence reports ready. You have your red flags in that. And now you want to use that information to translate directly into conditions for your, deal, or for that matter, coming up with your closing conditions, right? So if you have an integrated system that allows you to carry that information and, use cross-function or cross-information across to create a very seamless process and information trail. So I feel that is definitely integrated systems are going to be an important.
I will just quickly add one point that I was imagining while, what would a next day level lawyer look like, a junior associate? And I would say that there is always a chatbot powered by an AI generated chatbot, while AI would be always there, where you would be continuously asking questions, and we should be fetching the data from either from the data room or from the in-house knowledge library,
Yes,
which would
yes.
just continuously help you to do what you're doing. Like, it would be an AI assistant that everyone always wanted, an assistant, but it's now going to be presented, and the democratization of it is unparalleled.
Right. And a related question, Ishan, is do we need to probably have prompt engineering as part of curriculums in law schools or coding?
You'll be surprised. In fact, I was recently having this conversation with one of the vice chancellors, and he was very excited about the idea that how making people understand how service delivery mechanisms work, how the business of law works, and getting back to the idea of lawyers being thinking a little out of the box, have a little bit of entrepreneurial mind, because we have seen in our profession that we have suffered from that. The young lawyers have suffered from that because we have created and given them a lot of structured environment, which has not allowed them to challenge themselves. But now, being included back into the curriculum, where you're saying that this is how you have to learn, this is what it is, and this is what are the tools of the future, you have to equip them with it. And honestly, Indian private law colleges are fairly excited about this. I can tell you from that first-hand experience.
Right, agree. Next question, Aditya, and to you as well, Elena. This is one of my favorite questions, by the way. what impact is AI having on M&A enabling technology, for example, and these are specific ones? How does AI facilitate real-time market comparisons in deal conditions and contract terms? Also, how far are we from seeing an AI-generated due diligence report against the M&A transaction database, flagging the key deal risks upfront?
So I'd like to take a step back. Before we had AI, how do we do this, right? We all, within Khaitan also, we have a deal report, which is typically in Excel. And we ask a lot of legal nuanced questions to say, was there a warranty? Was there a tax warranty? How long was that valid? So on and so forth, right? And typically we had someone from the deal team fill in that report and then send it, and we collate it and sort of create like an internal database to say, hey, this is typically what we're seeing in the market. And using tools that we've been seeing in the last year or so, we found we can answer a lot of the simpler questions, like what is the value of the deal? What is the parties? Was there a tax warranty? But to get into that nuance, right? How long is it valid? Because sometimes you might write a clause in a very tricky way where you talk about something without using the keywords, right? Like lawyers love to do that. And sometimes the technology can miss those aspects of it. So I think it is helping with respect to question A in extracting these deal terms. With respect to question B in creating a full report, I think we are it'll happen in the near future, I think, about a year away in creating a good report. Again, going back to an earlier discussion on the quality of that report, I think we can create something which an associate can do in about a year or thereabouts.
I would add to that. I would say that there were some really innovative firms. I'd say like the Big Four legal and tax teams. Huge resources, quite deep pockets, and really the ability to leverage. I think Ishan, you said the full gamut of M&A advisors. Whether that's corporate finance, deal teams, post-deal advisory. The Big Four teams are doing quite a lot of this already. Okay, so I'd say we're probably further down the line. And some Magic Circle firms, the ability to automate much of the due diligence report is we're sort of quite a long way down the road already with some of that. And I think what that is allowing, and what that's allowing for busy corporate teams, is that ability to focus on the strategic value. Really hone down for corporate clients on strategic imperatives for the next acquisition. Looking at things like clone deal info to inform the next acquisition. So they're sort of keeping one step ahead. That's already happening, and I think that's really exciting. But again, it's that that review. How much of that due diligence report still has to be reviewed. Is it if 75% can be automated, how much time is a junior associate or the more senior lawyers spending reviewing it? So I think it's more maybe a question now of innovative firms and moving in that direction. What's the ratio between how much you can automate and how much is reviewed? But again, incredibly exciting movements, and again, for the benefit of the corporate clients and those stressed out deal teams. That's what I always go back to.
Right.
I would just like to add one thing with Elena. Yeah, so I think a lot can be done through standardizing a lot of your documents, what you're using in your deals. Now, I remember the times when we used to actually do the deals, capital raise, or for that matter, M&A deals. We would actually go per the type of the deal, and we would kind of create a template of a report and have moving parts in it that, for example, your issues are going to come from the data room. For example, your the annexures to the report can simply be you can actually export it and put it into your annexures. You can come up with a short executive summary where the language is standard, and then you are adding the red flags or the risks. And so I think that's, again, I say, is an area for the lawyers to actually work on. If they can standardize the types of reports they are using across different types of deals, and then technology can take it further, right? So that piece, I think, somewhere we all will have to do.
Right, agree. So before I move on to my next question, and that will be to you, Rasmeet and Elena, I would request the audience to put in their questions in the chat function that is there, the question segment that is there in the platform. We would love to take up more and more live questions towards the end of this session. But now coming to this question, Rasmeet, to you and Elena. Now, there are multiple technology platforms offered across M&A deal cycle, but no single platform which integrates the major functions like, say, due diligence, drafting, negotiation, closing, and organization tools, all of this together. Is this likely in the future? And what do you think are the obstacles or barriers to this? Why is this not happening yet?
Elena, would you like to go first? You already have the solution.
Thank you. So yeah, so Rashmi and I were talking about this, over the last week or so. Arguably, there should have been an end-to-end solution on the market some time ago. I know, Rashmi, you've wanted it for some time, and actually we launched in December our Thomson Reuters end-to-end transaction management solution to incorporate all of those pieces for exactly the reasons that Ishan and Rashmi you've said. During this webinar, the pain of being in multiple disparate systems that don't talk to each other is inordinate for deal teams. It's really frustrating. It also goes to the point of trying to get busy lawyers to adopt different technologies is really hard. Arguably the accountants sort of did it a bit sooner. Whether that's in tax or audit, lawyers have tended to be a little bit slower in the uptake in tech adoption. So we built out an end-to-end solution because there just had to be a better way. And again, going to those points we've made about VDRs, we have a really strong foothold in our VDR client base through HighQ, but we didn't have the closing solution piece. So we've done the integration with Deal Closer to address that. And we're seeing incredible market momentum, and again, for various reasons of efficiency, client transparency, that better client experience, that is absolutely at the centre of all of this. But if I had to say one phrase that's resonated with the 100 or so firms and corporate legal departments I've spoken to over the last couple of years, but certainly the last 12 months, it's that show me a single source of truth across the entire deal life cycle. And if you can start to do that, you really tip you start to tip the scales in favour of your busy deal teams, your corporate clients, and just transacting quicker, closing deals quicker, leveraging AI at the right time, and that all of the things that Puranjay was saying around client collaboration, how easy is it if team members are off to see where you're at in a deal. So we're delighted that we've launched it. It's we're loving the reaction from clients, be it corporate legal departments or law firms. So Rashmi, I'll hand over to you because I know you're very close to this too.
So Elena, I would also like to give some benefit to the other providers. So I've seen other tools as well. Definitely HighQ and Thomson Reuters has been pioneering into this area. Other tools are like Deal Closure, or for that matter, we have Dockyard, which has been taken over by Ansarada. Legatix, which is doing not everything, but at least 2-3 pieces, they have brought it together and they're doing it very beautifully. So there are definitely a lot of tools which are now moving towards that direction. So we can say we have a market for the integrated solutions. At the same time, I think another trend which is coming is integrating or collaborating with other tools. So for example, if I'm a data room provider, I don't need to build everything, right? So I can actually collaborate with a contract management or a contract company. And similarly, I can integrate with a closing documentation company. So I think these integrations and collaborations is another one of the area which is really coming up. And it is possible because of, again, we can say that there's a lot of technology available today for that. And I think coming to the obstacles, I definitely want to talk about that as well, because I think when we talk about integrated solutions, they are definitely highly priced, right? And we being in India, sometimes it is a challenge for us to be able to, subscribe to these systems, because they are maybe some major law firms or some major organizations might be able to do, but a smaller law firm might not be able to, take the cost of that. So I think cost is one area which maybe the international providers will have to consider and, kind of make it, optimize it more towards the Indian jurisdiction so that people can adopt more. Yes, we are also seeing some of the data room companies coming up in India, which are, kind of now developing their own data rooms and offering those services. So there's a lot of technology which is also coming up in India, but of course we are not at that scale, I would say, but would still promote. Again, the processes can differ. So therefore, we need to be, as I said, flexible, customizable on these areas, and ethical issues, of training your data. Because we know as transaction lawyers, we don't want to, share our data anywhere, or we are not comfortable using other drafts or other data available. So how we can ensure that we are using our own data, what kind of AI, systems we need to use so that our data, the intelligence is being used out of our data itself. So I think these are some of the challenges which I feel.
Right. I'll come to my last question, and then maybe we'll switch over to the audience question and answers. Again, a request to everyone is that please feel free to put in your questions in the chat box. This question, we are back to the human side of it, and question is to you, Aditya, and also Puranjay. How is the impact of enabling technology changing the structure and composition of the M&A teams?
So I think we're going to see more folks who are not really legally trained, but perhaps on the projects management side of things, to sort of just hold the pen, which is something, someone from an associate in the team is just actually manually looking at documents that have come in, emails that have come in. I think those tasks can be offhanded. I think there might also be more training involved, specifically on how to use these tools. There might be someone just from a change management perspective sitting within each practice area, like how we have knowledge management lawyers. We might have just someone specifically for change management. Yeah, I think these are going to be some major changes.
And I think to add on to that, I think there was a great study by Gartner in 2022. They mentioned that legal departments would eventually have 20% of non-lawyers as well. And I think we are seeing that trend as and when the companies are getting more into technology. And as Aditya rightly mentioned, there would be some generic roles like your project manager, or let's say a data analyst to analyze your data. And as the companies get more mature into technology, they might even have integration specialists to the point that Rashmi mentioned, in order to build integration of its own, in order to cherry pick specific softwares that suit their need and are not that expensive, and get an integration built by themselves. There are a lot of current roles that are there, at least not in Indian market, but definitely in US or Europe, where they're hiring specific stakeholders who are great at Tableau or Power BI or even Power Automate for that matter, in order to automate a lot of their processes, again, depending on how deeply tech rooted they are or how deep they are in legal tech. So I think we'll definitely see a great shift, and I think it's a great chance for newer generation of lawyers or people who are still in law school to actually get ahead of the curve. And I think everyone mentioned that slowly they are reaching to the stage of principal, associates, etc. So if you are the enabler of that, you can definitely from the first day you start working get to that stage and definitely contribute in that segment.
Excellent point, both Aditya and Puranjay. I think there has been a study as to, if you look at the workforce, who would be impacted most? And right at the beginning, probably it is the people right at the top, and right below, the younger ones who are joining could face this to the largest extent, and people in between would have to quickly recalibrate, upskill, reskill, and get adapted. So I think with that, I will thank all of you, the members of the panel. Thank you so much for that insightful and interesting discussion. I hope our audience enjoyed it as much as I did. And now I would like to take some questions from our audience. So let's see, what do we have here? So one question is, I think to all of you, feel free to sort of pick this up. 10 years from now, where technology would play a massive role in the dealings of M&A, how much human assistance would be required by then, especially in drafting or due diligence processes? Anyone?
Maybe I can take it. As far as the due diligence process, I definitely feel we will have, I mean, it can't work without a human intelligence, right? So those nuances of the due diligence will always come from the experts, and they are the ones who are training AI. Maybe we might not need 10 partners, but maybe at least 2 of the expert partners who will be there to provide that intelligence to the software. Another area, I think drafting, definitely. To a large extent, it can be automated, as you know, we were talking earlier that you can have document automation technologies use that. But still, the final review layer is something which will have to be, that human review cannot go, I would say. The top level has to be there, because even if we have the best of the AI, I think that is a layer which will be there.
And go ahead, bro.
So to add on to that, I think we have seen a couple of mishaps of, false precedents being quoted in courts, etc. So it's always suggested to have at least the final layer, be it a review or a thorough run through of human intelligence to basically go through what is being presented to the clients, because again, we're in legal profession, everything that we are quoting or doing is of paramount importance. So it's essential to have that a human element.
Great. I think some very, very interesting questions. Sorry, Ishan, you wanted to go ahead.
I was saying that, I would say that as the analysis becomes better and better, and I know we're talking about 10 years down the line, the dependency on the human element will definitely reduce when it comes to the analysis part. But the decision making I think would definitely will and hopefully remain in the domain of the human species. So that's what my statement is.
This, I think the next few questions which have come in are extremely, I would say, interesting and thought-provoking. What role can technology play in enhancing our competitive advantage post the acquisition? I think a lot of it could be, for example, we have these transition services arrangement. I think technology could also play a very, very pivotal role there. Some of the large transactions, these run into years and years, where you're trying to amalgamate the two systems of the acquirer and the target, maybe. That's just my take, but anything else you would like to add, feel free.
I think for me, one of the biggest things is definitely the data transition, because I think that plays a huge role whether you are whatever you are doing. And so therefore, I think that is one important area which technology, is very good at. Data is something which...
Rasmeet, you are absolutely right. There's also a human element there. See, probably the deal is such that the existing people would no more be handling the data. But in the transition services, those are the people in the tech side also who are assisting you in transitioning. There have been instances in the past where leakages happened at that time when deal has happened and this transition is happening. So I think a tech check there is also very important, as is the human check. The next question is kind of related. How can we assess the cybersecurity risks associated with the target company's tech infrastructure?
I guess the assessment here about the cybersecurity and the tech infrastructure, those will definitely go hand in hand. And if you see how the RFPs are now being structured by the clients when it comes to law firms or vice versa, there is always this tech questionnaire where you have to understand the tech stack. Now lawyers and law firms have to answer such detailed questions about what their structure is, if they are going to be using AI or if they're going to be using technology, how are they going to do it, and how these certifications and how these international regulations where you would have to start certifying yourselves, all professional services would be required to do so. So cybersecurity becomes a key element, and everyone is going to be talking about it. It becomes as important an administrative cost as probably like electricity or household supply, infrastructure supply in your organization. physical infrastructure or digital infrastructure. They need to be prim and proper.
Interesting question again. The discussion till now has been mostly from law firm or technology consultant perspective. I would like to know, will the AI tech be a law firm tool only, or in-house legal teams can also explore the, provided of course it makes commercial sense for the case for the internal budgets? And will the AI tools vary from buyer and target perspective? Very good one. I think if you want to pick that up, any one of you.
I would have a stab at that one and say, corporate legal departments, in-house legal teams are already using AI-assisted tools, partly to capture more of the workflow in-house, so they have that visibility of what's going, instead of going out to panel firms. That's a cost point, isn't it? How can we do more in-house, maybe send less out to those panel firms, and have that sort of overarching view of what we're doing. Maybe on transactions as well. So for M&A particularly, if you're a large corporate and you do a number of acquisitions or divestitures, you want to keep some of that in-house. So that's already happening. And again, to the extent that you might want to keep some of it in-house, but then the rest goes out to a law firm, having that sort of, an ability to have a collaboration platform between your in-house legal team and the law firm is critical. Again, that already happens. And I think corporate in-house teams are getting increasingly sophisticated. There are a number that, are very sophisticated legal tech users. So I think, as the role of the GC and the in-house legal team becomes more strategic, many GCs reporting into CEOs and really sort of spearheading those sort of corporate strategic direction, you'll see, maybe more control come into corporate legal departments, and you'll probably see the tech firms pivot and focus some of those tech vendors on the corporate legal departments for exactly those reasons. So I think it's good for in-house teams, corporate, to have more of that power, more of a visibility. Again, exciting times ahead.
I agree with Elena, because I think today I would say the corporate legal departments are pushing a lot of technology requirement to the law firms. And law firms being their clients, they are not only upgrading or enhancing their tech capabilities, but are also expecting that their partners or advisors are also using similar kind of technology, or at least the technology which can give them more visibility. So I think I would definitely say that the in-house teams are by far one of the biggest users of technology today.
Great. I think the next question, I will get started, and if you have anything to add, please do, because this is one of my favorite areas which I love to talk about. The question is, have you encountered any unique challenges related to cross-border data transfer in mergers and acquisitions? So see, firstly, I think every jurisdiction now has already come up or is coming up with some data related law or the other. Okay. Many of them have data localization requirements, which is basically my data should reside within my country. And there are various theories and counter theories to this. I'm not getting into that. There's a trade theory, which is my data is my oil and therefore I should only use it. There's a security theory that my people's data should be safe in wherever it is, and my law enforcement authority should have access to it whenever they want, etc., etc. And sometimes the tools that are chosen are also kind of carefully checked on that basis. Are they keeping the servers within the country, or is it going out, etc.? Now, what are the kind of challenges that we have seen? We've actually seen some transition, some changes in the way deals are handled. For example, earlier you used to have tax structuring first before someone went ahead and did an M&A transaction. We are observing data structuring happening first now when an M&A deal is happening, because they want to know if the acquirer, say from an offshore jurisdiction, has some aspiration of taking the data outside and processing it in any manner. It could be a very simple back office employee, kind of data getting crunched for payroll purposes, etc., whatever, So these elements are getting thought through before, as compared to a latter event when post-transaction you start mulling over as to how to handle data. So these are just a few, instances that we are observing right now when you look at cross-border mergers and acquisitions. Any other thoughts on this? Happy to take in, and then maybe we can move to the next question. Great. I think we'll move to the next question, which is what are some innovative AI-driven approaches or tools that are reshaping due diligence, target identification, valuation, integration, and post-merger performance evaluation process within the M&A landscape? I think we already covered, but if you want to sort of top that up.
I think it was pretty much covered in the first slide that you had.
Yeah. So I think maybe first slide, and I think also the presentation, what Elena and Rashmeet and all of you, I think, spoke in that we have already covered a large number of these, what is available there. The next question is definitely we are using more and more technology today. However, from an Indian perspective, don't you feel that there shall be more compact technology law? Changes or suggestions are welcome. I think I'll take a stab at that. Of course, our law needs to kind of pace up with the technological developments that are taking place, and that's a global problem. It's not an India problem. Of course, we have our Information Technology Act and the rules, etc. But we are realizing that it's a little dated. Okay, so what is the country doing right now? What we are trying to do is think of a mother umbrella legislation, which will be a new one. Which will be called the Digital India Act, and that will cover everything. What you see in Information Technology Act today, like digital signature, electronic records, cybercrime, etc., and it will be plus. It will also cover emerging technologies. It will cover things like more newer aspects of cybercrime and things like those. So I think we are in that journey. Probably post the elections, we'll see a lot of action around this. So I think we have just 2 to 3 more minutes. Sorry, you wanted to say something, Ishan? Go ahead.
Yes. So Subradip, I was saying that there is definitely a requirement when it comes to professional services provider, and I know our conversations has been around law firms, in-house, and lawyers particularly. There is definitely a more whether it is a body like the National Bar Associations, etc. They're coming together and regulate, not regulating, probably maybe going a little step further, but at least issuing certain guidelines. And I know that the American Bar Association does a few things about that. And if I were to look in the Indian context, and how do you protect data, how, and not as for the stringent as GDPR, maybe as stringent as GDPR, but how do you deal with the data? How do you process the data? And these are important standards that every service provider should be adhering to. These are constantly ignored because of the way somehow probably we are conducting our M&A processes, and in a more like physical way. But when it comes to more digital aspect of things, so those standards, if they are going to, this is the future, that these standards are going to be put down, and this should be adhered to by the larger professional services community.
Right. I think one last question, probably, or maybe one, 2. This is how AI can help in partner search process in M&A cycle, in case you have any insights on that. Anything, or maybe? Okay, great. It's a little off the overall kitty of things that we are covering. The next one is what are the customization options available in M&A software to adapt to unique deal structures, industry requirements, and organizational preferences, if there's any?
I mean, I can talk about customizations in terms of, say, for example, various types of processes that you're using, in terms of various documentation that you're using. Again, when you are creating your own, I would say, issues list, or for that matter, your closing checklist or documentation, then how you are customizing in terms of having the right attributes coming into your, all those checklists or for that matter, any documentation that you're building into your software. So I suppose I'm talking more from the technology perspective, but maybe Supratim, you can add more from the legal perspective as to what you can have from the M&A perspective.
Right. I think nothing further, and also we are almost on top of the hour for this segment. So yeah, it has been certainly a very, very thought-provoking discussion. To me, some of the key takeaways from the webinar, and there are also many questions which are left. Be rest assured, we'll revert offline on them. But if you ask me, I was trying to jot down some of the key takeaways, and here they are. So I think AI and technology adoption in M&A is indispensable, and it is and will be of a competitive advantage. Also, the next important takeaway, the human side is as important as the tech side of it. It is important, therefore, to look at upskilling, reskilling, and also staffing differently your M&A transactions. We'll now have a poll. Before closing, I'd like to ask each one of you to respond to the poll slide on your screen to provide your feedback on today's webinar. We take this very, very seriously as part of our continuous improvement program. Yeah. Great. So thanks to everyone who participated in the poll. And finally, I would like to thank all the panel members for sharing their expertise and experience with us today. You were simply outstanding. Thank you so very much. Also, thanks to you, our audience, for your attention and your questions. I hope you found the webinar interesting and a worthwhile investment of your time. We certainly enjoyed bringing it to you. After the webinar, we will send you a copy of today's presentation materials, summary notes, and a link to this webinar recording. You will also separately receive a request for your feedback on the webinar. Please do take time to send us your feedback, comments, criticism, and even compliments. The form takes less than 1 minute to complete. If you're interested in in-house training or any other matters arising from the webinar, please do not hesitate to contact us. Our contact information is on the slide at the end of the webinar. And thank you for your attendance today. We look forward to being with you again in another M&A Academy session. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks for them.